In quite a bold move, the Kochi government has decided to raise down 4 luxury apartments because they violated some environmental laws. Kochi now gears up to witness the implosion of 5 high-rise buildings using explosives. Today and tomorrow, the demolition will take place. Explosive experts say that the sound and vibrations will be much lesser than of a festival firework. 5 residential buildings, all of which were occupied for several years, all luxury apartments there in Cochin, are said to be demolished for violating environmental laws. The apex court had adjudicated that these waterfront apartments violating the coastal regulation zone rules, which prohibits construction within a certain distance from the coast, backwaters, river and lake beds. The builders of these 4 apartment buildings washed their hands off the case. The residents took various legal recourses to stop the demolition. However, the Supreme Court held its judgment throughout. In order to minimize the impact, only a minimum quantity of emulsion explosive is being used to implode the waterfront luxury apartments that are over 17 to 19 stories. Trenches have been dug around the buildings to minimize the vibration to nearby houses, and 10 layers covering using steel mesh and geotex has been provided to all pillars to be exploded. Massive luxury apartments that will be demolished by the Kochi government now after the Supreme Court held up the judgment. In fact, the Supreme Court did note that all these builders who have now washed their hands off the case have violated several environmental laws. These apartments come on the coastal line of Kochi, and they're said to have violated all the laws pertaining to construction on a lake, river, water body. And here is this not 1, not 2, but 4 luxury apartments, which amounts to 5 buildings altogether, each being 7 to 19 story, are currently going to be demolished, and explosives are going to be used to bring down the structure. The explosive experts say that they're going to use minimum, or the explosions are going to have minimum impact and sound, and as smoothly as possible they will carry out this demolition drive. This is the first of its kind that we see here in Kochi. In fact, one knows the several number of constructions, illegal constructions, that have been carried out in Bengaluru as well, across of lake beds. There are hundreds of buildings belonging to influential people which still stand tall in Bengaluru city. Will the government here as well take cognizance? Just like the Supreme Court has upheld the case that accused these builders, luxury apartments, of violating environmental laws, will Bengaluru's illegal construction or lake beds also be pulled up? This is a clear, glaring violation carried out by these builders in Cochin, and of course all of these 4 luxury apartments will now be brought down because of violating several environmental laws. Let's take a quick listen. Ashish joining us on the phone line. Ashish, do give us some more details. Any word on who will bear the cost in terms of relocating these members? Are the house owners going to have a replacement, or are they going to be left high and dry?
Well, Nabila, speaking about the reimbursement or the compensation, the Supreme Court that had ordered the demolition of these posh flats has also ordered a payment or a compensation of 25 lakh to each of those who lost their houses. Now, who exactly will be bearing the cost, and how much will, it will be distributed between the builder and the contractor and everyone, all the stakeholders, is still not clear as of now at this moment. It is something that is still under discussion, but having said that, this is a massive demolition drive which is going to take place, and the Kerala government is going to undertake this on the orders of the Supreme Court. Now, massive arrangements have been made for this 2-day demolition that will begin in a short while, when the first building will be razed to the ground within seconds, and the second one will also take place in the gap of 5 minutes. Now, 800 grams, 800 kilograms, I beg your pardon, of explosives will be stacked in the buildings to demolish them in a highly controlled manner, and massive, a crowd also, as if you could see on your screens, a crowd also has gathered around the buildings to catch a glimpse of something that, of course, for them is a spectacle. But having said that, for the residents, for the people who are losing their houses, their dream homes, it is something of a tragedy. For someone else's mistake, they'll have to bear a massive cost. Now, over 350 flats is what we're looking at as of now in Kochi, in entire Kochi, and these flats house around 240 families. So that is what we are looking at, the numbers that we're looking at. If you remember, in September last year, the Supreme Court had ordered the demolition of 4 buildings in Maradu for violating all of these norms. And now, all of this will be taking place, which will span around 2 days, and 25 lakh of compensation is what we're looking at as of now. How much will each party, each stakeholder, each person responsible will add to that is something that needs to be still scrutinized. That is still under discussion. But having said that, people are set to lose their dream homes, and this, on one hand, you have a beautiful spectacle, for a lot of people. On the other hand, a lot other people, the residents, are all set to witness a tragic scene, if you can call that.
Well, very unfortunate for those owners there. Ashish, thank you very much for joining us with those details. 5 luxury apartments that are going to be demolished, a demolition drive that has never been done before. This nature, massive luxury apartments that are going to be demolished using explosives, and the experts there say that this is going to be a smooth affair as much as possible. The impact of the explosion will not be harsh. This will be carried out smoothly. In fact, we know that time and again the owners of these luxury apartments tried hard to avoid this demolition drive, and then the matter was in Supreme Court pending. They expected some relief, but the Supreme Court upheld the order. And 4 of these luxury apartments in Kochi, the names being Alfa Serene, Golden Kayaloram, H2O Holy Faith, and Jane's Coral Cove, are ordered to be demolished by the Supreme Court. The Apex Court adjudicated that these waterfront apartments violated the Coastal Regulation Zone rules, the CRZ, which prohibits construction within a certain distance from the coast, backwaters, river and lake beds. And as the builders of these 4 apartment buildings washed their hands off the case, the residents ran pillar to post to in fact try and stop this demolition drive, and even approached the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court upheld the judgment. 4 buildings will be demolished today and tomorrow. It's going to be quite a heart-wrenching sight for those who've lived there for over a decade. In fact, we hear that the explosives have already been placed in these buildings, and a mock drill is currently being conducted. It was conducted whole of yesterday to ensure that all of those personnel involved, including firefighters, are prepared to carry out the demolition drive. 2 of the agencies, a Mumbai-based agency and a Tamil Nadu-based explosive agency, will carry out the demolition drive, and this is being done with much precision and will be a first of its kind of such a large-scale demolition that will be carried out, setting an example for builders across the country that if you are violating environmental laws, the fate will be just as we see here of these 4 luxury apartments. Now, this is certainly going to draw a lot of flack on construction here in Bengaluru as well. Several lake beds have been encroached, massive high-rises, luxury apartments, industries, whatever the building holds. Enough and more violation has been noticed in across of lake beds in Bengaluru, and let's hope this will be a start and a precedence for, first of all, the authority is not giving permission to the builders to carry out construction on lake beds even in Bengaluru city, all over Bellandur, starting with Bellandur itself. Even though it had national attention, it received national attention and focus after the frothing and the lake turning into quite a horrific sight with the frothing that gathered global headlines. Even then, the NGT gave a strict warning and a whip to the state government to demolish those illegal constructions across the lake bed. But we see even till date, not a brick has been moved. Not any of those building owners have been summoned or questioned. Those buildings across of lake beds in Bengaluru city as well remain tall and glorious. Will they also be pulled up, just like what has happened to these buildings, luxury apartments in Kochi? Unfortunately, these the builders itself of these luxury apartments have got away scot-free. They have washed their hands off this entire case. It's now all on the shoulders of the apartment owners to find their way out and get an alternative stay. Well, two agencies like we see, Mumbai-based Edifice Engineering are going to be they're going to be demolishing this building, including Vijay Steels and Explosives from Tamil Nadu, who will be carrying out the demolition drive. It will be a controlled implosion is what we hear. This massive 19-story luxury apartment will be demolished in Kochi only for violating environmental laws. It's quite a shocker that the Supreme Court also upheld the judgment, but for sure relief to environmentalists and citizens alike all over that this will not be tolerated. Any environmental violation will not be tolerated, and even though residents have been living in these apartments for decades, it's now time for them to pay for what they invested in, an investment which turned illegal. But why aren't the building owners, basically the builders themselves, not being pulled up is a question here. In fact, the demolition of these 4 buildings will be carried out through controlled implosions using explosives. This means that on demolition, the buildings will collapse inward. Unlike an explosion where the debris fall outward, this will have an implosion where the building will collapse inward. According to the demolition experts in India, the debris will fall more than 20 meters away from the buildings, and that buildings in the vicinity will not be affected. A total of 943 kgs of explosives. A total Well, what's to be noted and the highlight here is that this building will be demolished through much precision, and 943 kgs of explosives will be used to demolish the 4 buildings at a cost of a whopping 2.32 crores. 943 kgs of explosives will be used to demolish the 4 buildings, luxury apartments, at a cost of 2.32 crores. This will be one of the first of its kind, that a demolition drive that will be carried out, which has violated several environmental laws. It comes on the coastal line of Kochi, and the fight has been on for quite a few years with residents, the owners of the apartments there, running pillar to post to see if they can get some relief. But unfortunately, so far, the Supreme Court has only upheld the laws put forth by the Environmental Department. The Environmental Ministry has made it very, very clear. In fact, it's the successive governments who have made it very clear that no construction should take place anywhere across of water bodies, lake beds, water banks, coastal lines. It's not strictly prohibited, not allowed. And here despite warnings, the builders have gone on to build massive 17 to 18-story luxury apartments. Despite such warnings and NGT orders being in place, absolutely clear in black and white, it seems like the building owners, the builders have not followed the rules and regulations put in place by the NGT. They have violated all of these norms that have been set right by the Environmental Ministry, and they have gone on to build stories as tall as 18-story buildings, as tall as 18 floors, 19 floors, which is not a joke. Despite regulations, they violated all of those regulations. Went on to build 19-story buildings, 4 luxury apartments, which amounts to 5 buildings there. One apartment there has 2 blocks. 5 buildings, 4 luxury apartments going to be demolished in just moments from now. It's going to be 943 kgs of explosives will be used to demolish the 4 buildings at a cost of 2.32 crores. And we believe the explosive experts say that they're going to demolish the building with much precision, where the building will implode. Basically, the demolition will be carried out in such a way where the implosion, in fact, it's not even called called an explosion here, it's called an implosion, because the explosive will be placed in such a way where the building will implode and the collapse will happen inward. All the debris will fall within the vicinity itself. None of the buildings across or around the area will be affected or touched. Of course, it's created a lot of fear among residents around the area there, a lot of the establishments, not just residents, several other establishments also around the vicinity, they're feeling worried that the explosion might cost them their own or harm their own property in the vicinity. But experts here have maintained that the repercussions to this implosion using explosives will be bare minimum. Let's hope that it happens the same way as they have promised and there isn't much trouble while demolishing these large structures. One should remember this comes on the coastal line. But there you go. The building has collapsed. Well, the building has collapsed there. The massive structure, a 19-story building, has imploded thanks to a team who have used at least 900 odd kgs of explosives to demolish the building, and it's imploded is what we hear, but we see a thick blanket of smoke there. Still no clarity if there has been perfect demolition, but from what we see here, the building has gone down, the entire building has collapsed, and it appears that the entire area has been covered in a thick blanket of smoke.